And, you know, what is Sage Intelligence and why do we have it? Do we want it? Will we use it? Is the biggest questions that you're gonna have. Okay, so here's the deal. Back in the day, when we were owned by State of the Art, and then we were owned by Sage, the product came in, was delivered with a financial report writer called FRX. And FRX was a Microsoft product, and Microsoft actually discontinued the product several years ago. So when that happened, Sage went out looking for a replacement. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, goodness, I never used FRX. I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, that is true. A lot of the users never embraced FRX, which is fine. They use the financial reports that are built into the system. Okay? We use the financial reports that are built in the system. Now, here's that trick. That's under the custom financial reporting. Those are old DOS reports that are made to look, the menus are made to look like Windows, but it really is an old DOS program that Sage is really no longer supporting. Now, they have not told us they're going to discontinue support for that, but you are somewhat limited on what you can do with those custom financials. You can't make them real pretty. You can't highlight them. You can't add pictures or colors or whatever. But for a lot of us, they're fine. Or a lot of us use under the reports menu of General Ledger the financial reports. And for a good majority of you, those are fine. So who would use Sage Intelligence? Well, we're going to have to keep an open mind on this, okay? Some of you will need to use Sage Intelligence, or, well, I'll go into my or in a second, and like if you have consolidated companies that you wanted to do financials for, you need to make them pretty or whatever. Now, the history of it is while Sage was looking for this product, looking for a product to replace FRX, there was another company out there, and there actually are several. One of the companies is called BizNet. BizNet is a financial report writer. Well, not just financials. It can integrate with all your other modules too, but it's Excel-based. And so a couple of our clients went the BizNet route because Sage, it took a long time to develop this Sage Intelligence product. So we do have users out there using BizNet. Well, Sage Intelligence is also a Excel-based product. It will also integrate with your other modules. But today we're going to demonstrate the ability to create financials off of the Sage Intelligence. So, and quite honestly, I'm going to lay it out there. If you are going to do this, you are going to connect to other modules. There's a cost involved. So keep that in mind also when you're looking at this. So at this point, I'm going to hand the headset back off to Suzanne, since my headset was not wanting to work, and I talked for like 5 minutes. You couldn't hear me. But I'm going to hand this off to Suzanne and let her take over. And if you have any questions, please type them in. I'm going to be trying to monitor those, and I guess I'm going to have to run in here and say, hey, there's a question, since my headset's not working. But we're going to have her, do the presentation. If you have any questions afterwards, give us a call. Quite honestly, I still am a little bit in a fog. She's embraced this, very, very well, and she keeps rattling my brain, trying to get it, stuffed in my brain to understand. But she's got a pretty good grasp on this. So, guys, here she is. I'd like to introduce Suzanne.
Good morning, and thanks to all who are participating. This is going to be real basic. I will kind of take you through the steps. I have several worksheets set up, so you're not going to have to watch me do a lot of keystrokes. On the left is a actual versus budget and percent report that I set up inside of the General Ledger module. So you can see by comparison, and then on the right is what we finally end up with using Sage Intelligence. So you can see in the intelligence I did based upon main account, the regular General Ledger report has your account number all the way out to all of the digits. And then also the nice thing that you will notice and we'll kind of get into is in intelligence you can move accounts around. So you will see here, for example, I've got all of the salary accounts together where in the SAGE report you have it based upon the account number. So let's get started. I'm going to close this down and I'm going to open this up and we're going to go back here and we're going to go back here. Inside of SAGE, under SAGE Intelligence Reporting, and I will let you know I am using the 2014 version, and that is because in the 2014 version, the SAGE Intelligence Reporting is actually a module. You don't have to launch it from Start Programs SAGE like you do in either the 2013 or the 4.5 version. So that's where I am. You go to Report Manager, and this is what the Report Manager looks like. What they recommend is, out of the box, the system comes with your home, your aggregated. The two folders that I've added are the My Reports, My Financial Reports, and My Reports. And they recommend that you do that. So if you're going to develop your own reports, then the recommendation is that you set up your own folder. It's real easy to set up a folder. You just right-click on Home and go to Add Folder. You enter a name and you click OK. So that is very easy to do. The other thing they recommend, similar to when we set up a new form code for you to have a custom invoice, they recommend that you not change the out-of-the-box reports. So if I'm using Report Designer add-in, I'm going to right-click, and it even tells you here to edit this report, you must make a copy. So I would always copy this report and then find my folder, right-click, and paste, and then my report would be inside of there. So that's the way that you get your reports in as a starting point. And then you just click them. You can rename them. All of this information is going to be in the handout that you get. So you will. So if there's things that I don't explain well enough during the presentation because I want to keep us in our 30-minute time limit, then all of that will be explained in your handout. And in addition, I think as I take a step back because I kind of got started off, there is, in addition to the Report Designer add-in, there is also the Designer. So that gives you some tools, and that's not our focus today, but when you get your handout, you will also have some information on the Report Designer. I find it a little bit more difficult to use than the Report Designer add-in, but some of that is just because I've not spent a lot of time with it. So some of you may like it better than the other. So, but we're going to concentrate on the Report Designer add-in. And so just to kind of show you the screens, you create a copy of the template that you want to use, and then you can go in and rename the report so it doesn't have to say copy of Report Designer add-in 1-2. This can be your income statement, actual versus budget. This can be your prior year comparison. This can be your balance sheet. It can be whatever name you want to give it. And then the same thing for your template. You can rename your template so that the template doesn't say, you know, copy of Report Designer add-in 1-2, because that isn't very helpful when we're looking for something and we want to rerun it. So what you do is you click the Run button, and when you click the Run button, you get this screen here with a task pane on the right. And the task pane on the right has lists, it has formulas, and it has trees. And we are going to concentrate today on lists and formulas. So the first thing we're going to do is we always want to start with a blank worksheet. So here's our notes page. It just has a little bit of information for you. And then you always want to start with a new page or a new worksheet. So what we will do is we will take, again, my sample, I'm using the main accounts. You could use account categories, account groups, account types, budget codes, main accounts, or just all the way down to the account. So what we'll do is we're going to drag this over into our worksheet, and you can see these are the pieces of information that we have. So we have the main account code, we have the description, we have an account category, an account group, an account type, and a cash flow type. Now for our example, all I'm really interested in is the main account code and the description. So I can either hide the remainder of these columns, or I could actually delete them if I wanted to. But for our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and hide them. And so there they are, they're gone. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to change my column width. So because, as you can see, my description isn't wide enough, so I might make this 30. And I might make this 12. And then we get to our next example. So what I've done here is I've made this bold and pretty, and I've changed that, and now it's bold and pretty. The other thing that you can do is this contains all of our main accounts. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all the balance sheet accounts. So I am just highlighting all of my balance sheet accounts. And for those of you that may not be as familiar with Excel, what I did is I clicked in my row, and that brought my little arrow, and then I just dragged it all the way down. And then I'm going to do Edit, Delete, and that gets rid of all of those rows that I'm not interested in. I could certainly hide them, but since we're doing an income statement, I'm just going to delete them because it's just extra information that I'm not interested in. So then what we get to is I need a header. So all of that information is contained in my formulas. So you can see in formulas we have opening balance, closing balance, actual year-to-date, budget year-to-date, current year, current period, and the company name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the company name up here, and then I'm going to add a couple of labels. And so my labels are going to be current year and current period. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, current year. I'm going to just drag that, and that's 2010. And yes, that is the current period for our test database. And I'm going to drag the current period, and the current period is May, so 05. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, what kind of information do I want? So I want the actual, I want the budget, I want the variance, and the variance percent. And then I'm going to do the same thing for year-to-date. And then on I go. So I'd end up with 8 columns of information in my report: actual, budget, variance, variance percent for the current period, and then the same columns for the year-to-date. And I'd make them all pretty, and so you can see, here we go, we've got all of our columns. So what pieces of information can I get out of Sage? Well, I can get actual and budget, actual year-to-date, and budget year-to-date, and then I'll use Excel formulas to calculate the variance and the variance percent. And that's the nice thing about the designer and the report designer add-in is you can get basic pieces of information, and then you can use your Excel knowledge to calculate formulas and then create management reports that maybe aren't standard reports inside of Sage. So what we do is, just like we did with the accounts, we're going to drag actual to my first cell, and we're going to drag budget, and then we're going to drag actual year-to-date and budget year-to-date. Now, these don't, other than the budget and the budget year-to-date, these don't look like numbers that we would want to have. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to modify our function. And you can see up at the top, this is a preset function. It says GL actual is something, so we're going to define that something, and then the current year and the current period. So we are going to modify that. When you do that, some of you may be familiar with these. You get them sometimes if you're doing just your standard Excel formulas. You might get a box that looks like this. So some of this may be familiar to you. Again, all of this information will be available in your handout. So if you miss something during our session, it'll be there, and then you're always welcome to give me a call and we can discuss it further. So what is my link? Well, in my instance, my link is my main account number. So if I click on this button and then I highlight my first main account number, and then this I'm going to use the F4 key, and the F4 key defines absolutes. So if I click it once, you'll see that it puts a $ in front of the column reference A and the row reference 11. Well, I always, my main account number is always going to be in column A, but I want it to move based upon what row I'm on. So I'm going to click F4 again, so that says the column changes but the row doesn't. I do it again, that says the row can change, the column doesn't, and that's the one I want. And you can keep hitting this. So if you pass by the one you want, you just keep hitting F4 until you get to your spot. Okay, for the year, now I could certainly leave this as 2010-05 if that was the only period that I want, but later in our discussion I'll show you why we don't want to do that. So we're going to click again, and I'm going to highlight my year, and in this instance my year is always going to be in cell B5. So I just hit that F4 key once. And then for my period is always going to be in cell B6, so I hit F4 once to get those $ before each of the for B and before 6. And the rest of this is information that you can customize, but these are the only 3 pieces that we're going to customize today. So I'm going to click OK, and I would repeat that for each of the 4 cells. So I would do it for the budget, I would do it for actual year-to-date, and I would do it for budget year-to-date. Now the added item in budget, and we'll click function, is that it's also, you have your budget code. So you may notice, although I didn't leave it up very long, when I did my Sage report, I had my original budget. When I did the intelligence report, I picked the revised budget. So I could certainly set up another variable that was budget code, and I could change that. So as long as it's a valid budget code in your database inside of your setup, then so for example, original, I could set it up so that I had a budget code and I could change that to original. But we're going to leave that for the time being. So after I had fixed all my formulas, this would be my starting point. So I'd have, again, actual, budget, year-to-date, and variance. And right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my two calculations. So the first calculation is going to be my variance, so actual minus budget, and then my variance percent. Now, I learned Excel a long time ago, so I use the @ symbol in place of the equal sign, but they do the exact same thing. So I'm going to say my variance divided by my budget. I'm going to take that to 3 decimal places. I'm going to round it to 3 decimal places, and I'm going to hit return. And then because actual and budget are in the same positions as actual year-to-date and budget year-to-date, I can just copy these two formulas, Control-C, Control-V, and I get my variance on the actual year-to-date and budget year-to-date. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy all these formulas. And if you can see, I hope, there, when I highlight this, there is a little square in the lower right-hand corner, and that allows me to fill my rows with this formula. So I'm just going to drag that down to the very last row. Oops. And we're going to go just a little further, okay? And then we would do that for each of our columns. So I would do that for budget. And this is nice. So I know, I learned copying the first one and paging, holding down my shift key, and it's the same thing that some of us learned in early versions of Excel, but this is kind of nice because it just drags it all the way down. So we would do that for all 8. So it doesn't work on just the Sage formulas. It works on any formula that I've created. And as you will see, and you've probably come across this, you get this divide by 0. So I'm going to show you a formula that you can enter to get rid of that, because it used to be that we just hit the delete key. Well, what happens next month when there is values? So then you have to copy those formulas over and start again. So I'll show you in just a little bit. I'll show you the formula that you can enter that will not show that divide by 0 unless when it comes up. So here we go. We've got all of our information filled in, all of our formulas, and we're going to format our cells. So if I'm here in these numbers, I like them to be a number, and I like my comma separator, and I like to say OK. And if it's a percentage, then I like it to be a percentage. And since I've taken it to 3 decimal places, I want to say 1. So when it shows as a percentage, and then the same thing here and down, it's a number, and then my percentage. So and down, it's a percentage. And OK. Okay, so here's my trick. If I come in here, there is a formula that says if error. So what happens? This is the value if there is not an error, which is the divide by 0. And then what I like to do, let's see if it is divide by 0, I like to leave just blank spaces. Some people like to put 0% in. I prefer to do just a space. So if I copy that all the way down, you will see now instead of divide by 0, I just have a space because my budget number, my divisor, is 0. So I just but that again is personal preference. And so I can take that same formula and copy it over to my year-to-date, and those are gone. And that way, as I change my periods, that will change, and I won't have to go back and copy a formula all the way down and make a bunch of changes, hoping to catch those and correct them each period. The other thing I did was I highlighted and I made my company name pretty. I added a title for my report. I see we're getting close to time, so I'm going to kind of move along. Now, again, all of this information is explained in your handout. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how to move a cell. Now, the one caveat and the one thing that they will tell you is be very careful when you start moving rows, because if you only move part of it, you're going to come up with some incorrect results. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this other expense, this account 500. I'm going to move it down to the bottom above my provision for income tax. So I'm going to insert a row, and then I'm going to go back up. And again, if you always put your cursor on the line number, then hit, that gives you the line all the way from column A all the way to the very end. And I'm going to do Control X because I want to cut that. And I'm going to go down to row 68, and I'm going to do Control V. So now the nice thing is, again, if I'm in my general ledger module, I'm not able to move those accounts around. If I'm in here, I can. And in addition, and one thing I haven't documented, but something that is available, is you can add accounts together. So let's say, for example, you have 5 different related accounts for continuing education. Well, you can put in a formula to add those main accounts or with your sub-accounts together, and that will provide you with those kinds of summary information. So I'm going to come over here. So, and the other thing, like I showed you, was these accounts would have been in account number order, so we would have had clerical salary 605 would have been down here. But in my report, my management wants to see all of the salary and benefit accounts together. So I've, rearranged that. So I just inserted some rows and started moving things around so that you see all of the 3 clerical salary accounts, a bonus account, sick pay. So all of these salary accounts, instead of being in probably like a division area, they're now all together. And then finally, based upon your personal preferences, as you know, in our standard reports, we don't get dollar signs, we don't necessarily get the brackets for our negatives. So there's lots of formatting things that you can do, and some of which helps when you present the information, and so your management, it just kind of helps them to see things a little bit differently, so that you're not having to export a financial report into Excel and try and move columns around, and then you always run the risk of things being off a little bit. So this is just a great tool for you to be able to do that. Now, the really nice thing is, and like I said, the reason why I put the current year and current period in my function was because I can change this to a 4, And when I hit enter, you'll see my numbers all change. So now I have my current period 4. And so if I'm in May and then I go to June, I can then run this same report. I don't have to do any additional formatting. And then I can add, I can add those periods as I go. I can add years as I go. If I want to do a comparison between current year and prior year, I can do that. And then as the years change, I just, I can have all of that information available in my spreadsheet, and off I go. So I see we are a little past our time. I see that I do have one question, and George, I will have to get back to you about that because I thought about that as I was just talking. What do we do as we add? And George's question is, how would you add a new account number to the report? And that is an excellent question that I am going to find the answer for and get back to you on that. Because, like I said, I kind of thought about that as I was talking. So something that I hadn't thought about. So we'll get back to you on that. Are there any other questions? Again, I'll have a handout for you. I know this was very fast, but there is a lot of information, as you can see. A lot of it is just getting the information out and then formatting it.
Suzanne, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I obviously fixed my technical problem, but I want to make you guys all aware, too, that we're just showing the general ledger piece. This actually will integrate with all of your other modules, sales order, purchase order, receivables. I don't know about payroll, if it integrates with payroll or not, because payroll is written in a slightly different language than the rest of the program. But those other products, or when you connect to another product, you actually have to use the connector module and the report designer, correct, Suzanne?
Well, there are some standard reports that come. So with the, like I said at the beginning, with the exception of my financial reports and my reports, these folders are all standard. So the designer and the report designer add in are general ledger specific. If I want to come, that's a bad example. So for example, there is a standard inventory report, and it tells you this displays current stock on hand, quantities, purchase, yada yada. So that is a canned report that comes. If I want to develop a inventory report that's different, then I would need the connector. So, for example, we had a client that wanted an open orders report, and I took that report that we had developed in Crystal, and I did the same thing in Sage Intelligence, but I did have to use the connector. So that is what, as Sue was saying, that is that's the additional charge or an additional license. That's the connector does not come as a product with the standard install, but it is available.
Right, and just like Crystal, we don't expect everybody to, look at this and go, oh my gosh, look how easy it is, because it is, a little challenging when you first get started with it, and we are learning it too, because it's a fairly new product for Sage, so we're learning it too, but it is out there. It comes with. If you're interested in getting more information about the product or having us assist you, write some of your reports or get you started or whatever, feel free to let us know. Suzanne, I think you did an excellent job on this presentation.
Thank you.
I think I actually learned a few new things myself today. Appreciate all of you guys coming, and if you have any additional questions, please let us know. Otherwise, we look forward to you attending our next Tech Tuesday, and which we don't have a subject matter for yet, so if you got something, let us know. Otherwise, we may be doing what's new in 2013 and what's new in 2014 because those products have been extremely stable, and we're pretty happy with them, and probably it's time to start moving some of you guys forward if you're not already there. We do have a handful on 2014. They seem to be doing okay. So anyway, everybody have a great day. Thank you for coming, and we hope you enjoyed the topic today, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.